So as we turn now to chapter 2 and the second major story within Daniel, we're going to get a critique of another feature of the culture of Babylon. But we're not going to talk about that for at least a couple of sessions because we have some of the sort of plot to work through in the first half of the story. One of the challenges when you're trying to answer some of these questions is that we sometimes think if we just read the story once and try to answer the question, but we feel like we're unable to answer it confidently, that's sort of the end of our work. We just can't figure it out, and so we just give up. In the real world, what we need to do is keep reading. So read the story, try to think about the question, read it again, read it again, read it again, read it again. As you read it, try to follow the narrative, just the basic plot line of the story, and bring in all of the information that's revealed to us in what is really a pretty concise story, and try to bring that to bear on the question. Okay, so this involves sort of weighing each piece of the story. So the question here was, why is Nebuchadnezzar so upset, and why is he doing this sort of odd test? If you look down at Daniel here, and you see that the Nebuchadnezzar says that he had a dream, and he wants to know the interpretation. So that the Chaldeans in verse 4 say, "O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show you the interpretation." And notice their assumption is he is going to divulge the dream, and then they will take some time to work through what the most plausible interpretation is of what the truth is from the will of the gods, and that has been revealed to him. And so the king says, no, my word is firm, meaning I'm not going to tell you the dream. I just want you to tell me what the dream is and the interpretation. And if not, he says you shall be torn limb from limb. So he's obviously in a kind of rage. He's quite serious in his threat, and he's angry. But again, we don't know why at this point. If you're reading Daniel 2 for the first time, you don't even know what the dream is at this stage of the story. And so they answered him a second time, and they said, I don't think maybe we misunderstood you, but you have to tell your servants the dream, and then, O great honorable king, we will give you the interpretation. This is sort of how the game is played, and they're just kind of reminding him. And then he says, look, I see you're trying to gain the time, meaning you're shocked by this because it's out of the ordinary, and you're trying to be flattering to me and sort of gently remind me of how this is supposed to work. But in reality, I'm not going to divulge the dream. You have to be able to divulge the dream first, and then the interpretation. And again, note the mastery of the storyteller here, that we as readers don't know the dream yet either. So there's a little bit of suspense and drama that's building. And then they finally just tell him flat out, in verse 11 here, the thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods. And they're basically telling him this is just not possible. It's impossible. No one's ever done this. No one's ever expected it. So the notion that they're under a death threat if they can't divulge the dream is they're basically insulting him because their lives are at stake, and they're trying to persuade him or dissuade him from doing this. So the question is, why is the king doing this? What exactly has brought this about? Why is he giving any kind of a test like this to them? He's clearly testing them to see if they can divulge the truth that the gods have revealed. Okay, so why is he doing this? Well, if we go further into the story, all right, we still haven't had the dream revealed yet, but we do learn something in addition to what we knew earlier in the story, and it's when Daniel is before the king and he begins to explain to the king a number of things before he divulges what the dream actually was. Okay, and then its interpretation. So what does Daniel say? He says in verse 29, "To you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts." Now this isn't the dream. Daniel's not talking about the dream here. He's talking about thoughts that Nebuchadnezzar had before he fell asleep. It was as you lay in your bed, while your brain's still functioning, you had thoughts. And your thoughts were about what would be after this. That is to say, Nebuchadnezzar is thinking about the future, and primarily, obviously, the future of Babylon, the future of his own reign, and perhaps how it's going to transfer to the next generation and so on. So he's thinking about the future of his reign, the future of the kingdom of Babylon that he oversees. Okay, that's the context. He's already thinking about that. Now, let's jump to the dream. Well, I don't really need to say much about the dream. You've read it, I assume. So the dream is there's this giant colossus, this giant image of a man that's out in the desert, and it is made of composite metals, and it's an awesome, inspiring, towering, even a sort of fear-inducing image. Okay? It's a huge image. Well, if there's any doubt who Nebuchadnezzar might have thought that image represented in his dream, who is the biggest man in all of Babylon? Well, it would be himself, Nebuchadnezzar. So he sees this dream, and of course, we'll get into some of the details of the dream in future sessions with future questions. But for now, the key is the end of the dream, that a crude rock gets ripped out of the side of the mountain and hurls across the desert and smashes into the image and smashes it to pieces, and it becomes just dust which the desert winds blow away. And then Nebuchadnezzar wakes up. So how do you think Nebuchadnezzar interpreted the dream? Well, he most likely, especially given what he does, he interpreted the dream as an indication of his own demise. That Nebuchadnezzar assumed that the dream was about him, the individual Nebuchadnezzar, and that this was a warning from the gods of an assassination or something, of his his impending demise. And so what does he do? Well, if he turns to the Magi and he divulges the dream, well, the problem is the Magi themselves might be involved in the assassination plot. They are leaders themselves. They're very influential. They're close to the throne. So they're a source of intrigue, and he doesn't really trust that he can go to them because they can twist what the dream means in order to protect their plot. So he's stuck. What does he do? Well, he decides to create something that has never been done, which is he goes to them and he says, if you can divulge the dream and then the subsequent interpretation, I won't kill you. But if you can't do it, I will annihilate the whole of you and start over with a new, younger crop of Magi. Now, why is he doing this? He's doing it because it's a safe route for him. If nothing else, it corks the bottle. You know, if anybody within the Magi were going to be a source of the plot, then they're wiped out and he's at least safe. Okay? So that's I think what's going on sort of in the background as the story develops. You don't see it right away, but as you hear the later bits of the story, the dream and the things Daniel says, you can sort of piece together why Nebuchadnezzar might be doing this. All right, so the next question then is why this specific test? Was there another way to do that? Probably. So why this specific test that they have to reveal the dream itself before they reveal the interpretation? That's what you need to think about for the next time. Best wishes, and we'll see you then.